Well, this is the super precision gyroscope that Rob Durham and others have used to fail to detect the rotation of the Earth. And I've got some things to say about this gyroscope. Most of them not so good, considering its cost. But I can tell you one thing. Down here, no bearings. In fact, that plastic I'm pretty sure is not Teflon. And the rest of the gimbals, again, no bearing surfaces. The only bearings are for the rotor. Now, the rotor's not bad, but you know what? There's a fundamental improvement that could be done with the rotor. And that would be not to cut out that big section in the middle. Had that been left in, the rotor would have more mass and therefore more energy, and more specifically and importantly, more angular momentum with which to work. At least the motor is a convenient way to spin it up. Gee, I didn't want that to happen. Oh well. That was unplanned.
There it is. Check it out, guys. That is so exciting. Incredible.
Hello my friends, I'm Kyle Thompson. This is Research Flat Earth. And as always, welcome back.
Magnetic fields of its atoms aligned, or by forcing the magnetic fields of atoms to align. But there's one more kind of magnetism that all materials exhibit, even those whose constituent atoms aren't magnetic, though it's so weak that the other kinds of magnetism often overwhelm it. Basically, an external magnetic field causes the electrons around atoms in a material to change course, and their new motion generates an opposing magnetic field. This field is pretty weak, but it does cause the material to be repulsed from the magnet a little bit. For example, if you hang a wooden toothpick in a magnetic field, the ends will repel the field and it'll end up aligning across the field. This is a convenient way to remember the name of this kind of magnetism: diamagnetism, since dia means across, like the diameter measured across a circle. Diamagnetic materials will repel a magnet, and a diamagnetic compass will point across the magnetic field. That is, it'll orient east-west. As weak as it is, diamagnetism is pretty darn awesome because it's a repulsive effect. Any diamagnetic material will levitate in a strong enough magnetic field, like this chunk of graphene, or since water is diamagnetic, this frog. In principle, humans could also be levitated this way, though the magnetic fields required would be enormous.
So what's this popular flat earth model I'm talking about? Well, here I'm at YouTube. I put in flat earth model, and it's this one. The azimuth, equidistant, with the sun and moon traveling around between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. You can watch the video here. I'm not going to play any of the videos. But this is the model I'm referencing right here. So here's something that I brought up in my first definitive proof video, but I didn't model it. And I want to model it because I just want to put this popular flat earth model that has the AE map with the sun and moon rotating around like this. I want to put this to bed. So just this one graphic right here, this one model, and it's all over. I chose Africa here because it's a spot where the Tropic of Cancer, the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn all land on a continent. So using this line of longitude right here, what I did is I placed a compass on each one of them, all right? So the compass is pointing north. This is what we've been taught in the popular flat earth model, and that west and east are like this. So this line right here is extended through the compass west and east perfectly straight. Now you can see what would happen on the equinox, as outlined so many times in the first definitive proof video. The sun rises 90 degrees east and sets 270 degrees west. Now you can see here that that's impossible. Even at the Tropic of Cancer here, you're going to have a rise where it's going to be north of east and it's going to be north of west. It's always going to be north because of this being a circle. So at the equator, even on the equinox, you're not going to get a 90 degree sunrise and a 270 degree west sunset. It's going to be north on both. And then out here, the Tropic of Capricorn. Never have a 90 degree east or 270 degree west sunrise and sunset. This model right here doesn't work. It's not right. The sun and moon are not rotating around like this. They're not 3,000 miles high. I have a bunch of other videos on my channel that show what's happening and how to understand it. So this is me, short, sweet, quick, to the point. This flat earth model is incorrect, and it's being handed to us by disinfo agents. So heads up. So here's a list of 10 things on how to know you're not on a ball, even though the sun, moon, and stars are patterned after us being on a ball. I'm not going to go and do a description of each one of these things for the sake of time. These are all things that you can research on your own. Number 1, there is no curvature. Number 2, the horizon always rises to the eye of the observer. Number 3, there is no parallax. Number 4, you feel no motion. Number 5, gyroscopes. Number 6, everything NASA has done has been a hoax. Number 7, the moon is semi-transparent and the stars have been filmed within the circle of it. Number 8, water always seeks level. Number 9, crepuscular rays. And finally, last but most important, the Bible says Earth is fixed and immovable, motionless.
Okay, there's the sun right there. Okay, there's the sun. And of course there's the moon. Okay, there's the sun. Now. Okay, I'm facing exactly east. And exactly east is, okay, now let's go a little bit to the south. And there's the sun right there. Okay, I'm facing exactly east. I'm bringing the camera up. And no, if I go over there a little bit. So, no, flat earth math. The sun is coming up just a little bit to the south of east than east, which is exactly how it looks on the AE map. Sorry, you're wrong on that one. But you did say closer to June, and it's only April, so we'll see what happens in a couple months. Maybe eventually you'll be right, but I doubt it. It's only like another 5 minutes since there's the sun, well above the horizon now, and of course still moon in the sky. Get that focus a little more. Okay, the sun. Okay, and we're going to. Let's get this thing facing north. Okay, come on. Okay, there's north. And direct east is right into the side of that house. There's north, and direct east is right into the side of that house. If I go a little bit to the south, hey, there's the sun. Direct east is into the house. Okay. Alright, now that we got the east south thing all straight, and there's the sun way over the horizon, and there's the moon still way in the sky. And it's 7:30 in the morning. Still not sure when exactly the moon disappears. It's just been hanging there. I mean, it was way up high in the sky in the night. And now it's just off to the west. So, there's the sun. And there's still the moon. Wait. Why can't I? There it is. Wait. Oh, there it is. It's getting lighter and lighter. So the sun's coming up and bleaching out the moon before it's not even anywhere near the horizon. It's just staying in the sky. The sun gets so bright and up in the sky that it just bleaches out the moon so you can't see it. So it never actually leaves the horizon. That's what I'm thinking. All right.
Mythology, just things that make you kind of wonder about things, and I think that's related to music. Music is mysterious. And
yeah, and it's also complex.
Okay.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Music's very, some of the works that you do are very complex.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times, do you find yourself having to simplify it down? Or?
Yeah, actually, that's interesting. I often have to simplify, like my harp parts. Sometimes orchestras give me parts that are too difficult and too many notes, too not written. Either they're just not written well for the harp, or even if maybe some harpists play it, maybe I find it awkward, so I have to either simplify it or adapt it. And yeah, so simplifying is, and I think I kind of like to simplify things in general. Like my brain can only focus on, few things at a time, like maybe one or two things at a time sometimes, and sometimes if things are just overly big and complicated, like the plot of a movie, I think this just has too much stuff going on. It would be better if it were simpler. And
Yeah.
so I guess I'm kind of a minimalist in that way.
Well, yeah, I think you are. When I was reading this, it seemed very, very the ideas are extremely complicated, but there's an elegance and a simple elegance to what you've done here. These are three basic. It's although the ideas are very complex, this is a very small book, and it's got pretty big writing. But she seems to have been able to take these ideas, and it's all complete. It has a lot of bibliography in the back that you can do more research, but the ideas come across, and that's what we want to talk about a little bit here, these ideas, because we could probably talk for 2 hours on this. I mean, there's a lot here. Basically, you're talking about a completely different idea to what we've all been brought up with.
Right.
The idea that the Earth is the way we've been taught it is. And Laurel has some very interesting ideas about what the Earth actually is. Would you care to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, let's say some of the ideas aren't okay. Start off. The idea that the Earth is flat. That's not my original idea. That goes back thousands of years. I would say thousands of years. Some people think that the Earth and the universe are millions or billions of years old, but I'm saying at least thousands of years. We don't have evidence that it's older than that, and it's flat, and that's the way we observe it to be. And I'm not the one who thought of that, but once you believe that the Earth is flat, you would want to explain, well, how does the universe work? What are the scientific principles? What's the sun? What's the moon? And this was my attempt at explaining what a flat Earth cosmos would look like. And one of the things in the modern age, there's the YouTube. You can get access to all kinds of unusual ideas through YouTube videos. And this is how I got into all this. I started watching
I was wondering.
sort of alternative astronomy ideas, like a lot of people are into Planet X or Planet Nibiru and just things like that. I guess I have a conspiracy streak, so the idea of yeah, and that's got me into some, there are all kinds of weird conspiracy ideas, but this one, I just started looking into alternative cosmology ideas just for fun, and some of them started to make you wonder, well, is this true, is this not true? And one of them I came across some guy saying the Earth isn't spinning and it's not even moving. But it wasn't like some sensationalist video. It was a guy with some physics training, and he was making some real physics arguments why there's no evidence that the Earth is moving. So I watched it, and he was very serious and said, like, gases don't stick to, like if you're smoking a cigarette and you move, the cigarette smoke doesn't follow you. Like, there's no reason why the gas would stick to a moving object. So that was one of his arguments. The other was that the mass of objects would be significantly different at the equator from at the poles, and
it's interesting. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, right.
And kind of get into their world. It's like kind of trippy.
Yeah.
So you're kind of attracted to trippy things.
Just things that sort of turn everything you've thought before.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it, to kind of expand your mind and think, what if?
Right, yeah.
And, I just want to be clear, you're not much of a a conspiracist. You
Actually,
are
I
attracted
sort
to
of
that.
am.
Are you really?
In some ways. I guess years ago I got really into some conspiracy theory about the government tracking people, and I kept doing research to try to prove that, and eventually I sort of came to the conclusion that the person who I was relying on for information was, was more likely that things weren't actually happening exactly the way she said they were, even though some of the information they came up with was kind of interesting. And I think people who get too caught up in conspiracy theories, like me at times, I don't think it's really good for your psyche to, I mean, I'm sure that there are powerful people in government conspiring to do all kinds of things and not being honest, but we basically have to just live our lives in spite of all of that. There's, if there's nothing you can do about it, you shouldn't spend all of your energy trying to.
Well, you can blow the whistle.
Right, yeah.
As much as you can. And I really like what you're doing is exposing these ideas, because and really what you've done too, we haven't really got into what it is you're actually doing, but maybe we can talk about that later.
Okay.
We probably should talk about actually what it is that you're proposing here.
Okay. So anyway, there are all kinds of YouTube videos. Like, anyway, once I watched this guy's video, he wasn't into the flat Earth idea, but he was a geocentrist. That means the idea that the Earth is at the center of the universe. So there are a lot of people who are geocentrists, but they don't believe the Earth is flat. They just believe that the Earth is round and it's at the center of the universe. And I think there's some new movie out called The Principle. I don't know if it's in theaters or on video or what, but this guy, Robert Sungenis, made this movie with evidence that the Earth is at the center of the universe. And but anyway, from geocentricity, I got into other ideas in the YouTube videos. There's this one guy who had this interesting theory that the Earth is concave, like that it's round, but we're actually inside it, or the whole cosmos is inside of it, and the land or the Earth we're on sort of moves up like that. It's sort of like we're on the inside of a ball, and the sun and the stars and everything would be at the center. And so I got kind of into his ideas for a while, and but I guess I didn't stick with that. The flat Earth thing just seemed to make more sense. There are a whole lot of good videos that would give arguments for why the Earth, why they think the Earth is flat. For one thing, you can see a lot farther than you should be able to see if the Earth were sloping away from you. It would be sloping away like 6 inches every mile, and the Earth actually, the theory of the globe is that the Earth has like a 8,000 mile diameter and 25,000 mile circumference. So it's not like an infinitely big ball. It's at some level, we should be able to see the curve of the Earth. But there's actually, if you climb the highest mountain, you go up in an airplane, there's no place from which we see any evidence that, we can't see the curve of the Earth. The only evidence for the globe theory is from like NASA pictures that we see on TV. And if the only evidence is something on our television screen, I think that's kind of suspect. So how did the people come up with the idea before NASA? That was something that was I did some research into where did the idea of the round Earth came from. And it's part of a bigger thing. It's not just that the Earth is round, it's part of a whole thought system that actually goes back thousands of years. It's the idea that the Earth, it goes back to ancient sun worship in India and Persia. The idea that there's a sun, that the sun was their main god, and the idea that the sun is at the center. And they had some versions of ancient Indian mysticism had this idea that the sun that we see is actually a reflection of another sun, like the sun, greater sun being God, and we see, and the sun we see is a reflection of God, and so
yeah, sun
like
worship, and that's like one of the earliest religions.
Yes.
That came out, and it kind of makes you wonder. Well, just because we're more advanced advanced according to what?
Right.
You know, maybe they knew.
Yeah.
Maybe they really got it, you know, and so, in some ways, you know, and then as you go along, you know, it's like telephone. You know, the information sort of gets,
Right.
you know, people have different agendas, and then next thing you know, we've got this globe, and it's,
Yeah.
you know, spinning, and, you know, it's just really interesting to see how information becomes sort of the thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is a picture of kind of an idea of what you're talking about. Two flat Earths together with people underneath that we don't even know about, we'll never see, or maybe someday we will.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. My idea is that yeah, the Earth is flat, and yeah, there are these two flat Earths paired together, and we have a sun and a moon, and they have a sun and a moon. They're upside down from our point of view, and yeah, so that's.
And there's something talking. This sun talks to this moon, as far as like a wave, or what?
Yeah.
What holds these things together? Is this the right picture?
Okay.
Or maybe we should use a different picture for that one.
Okay, yeah. So this sun is a transmitter. It transmits scalar waves to this moon. This moon is a receiver. And this sun is also a transmitter. It transmits scalar waves to that moon.
Scalar, and that's where Tesla comes in.
Right.
He's the one who invented or who discovered scalar waves.
Yeah, it's a theoretical thing, and you know, again, this is sort of fringe science. Mainstream science doesn't go along with a lot of Tesla's ideas, but a lot of people think he was, you know, really brilliant and really did have some great ideas about free energy, among other things. So
Yeah, well, they named a car after him. Can't be that
oh
bad.
yeah, it must be.
But what I'm a very technical person,
Okay.
and I'm just having trouble here with the two. Can you explain to me why is the sun drawn over on the other side?
I think I actually brought the wrong picture.
Oh, okay.
I think
Okay, but that's kind of the idea, is that there's
Yeah.
people on this side and people on
Yeah.
that side. Okay, because I'm just
Right.
trying to wrap my mind around
Okay,
this.
yeah.
Very complicated
oh, and
stuff here.
the moon has holes in it. Like the
Yeah.
holes
Where'd they come
enable
from?
it to receive the scalar waves.
Was
like
that-
our telephone receiver has, you know, you're talking to a telephone, there are
Kind of
holes
looks like
in
a
it.
telephone
Yeah,
receiver.
exactly. Yeah. So
Was that just accidental? The craters are there. The holes that are in the moon is from craters, right?
well, this is the thing. The scientific ideas we're taught is sort of that the world, the universe came to existence kind of by accident, just by happenstance, and it just worked out beautifully. But that's just kind of an accident. But I don't think there's any reason to believe that. I'm not actually like a biblical creationist. I don't believe every word of the Bible is true. I just happen to think that the Bible is closer to reality on these scientific matters than modern science is. For one thing, it's, you know, these are kind of simpler ideas. I tend to think that, well, there's a principle, was it Occam's razor, that the simpler an idea is, the more likely it is to be true. I mean, again, that's a simplistic version of, you know, that's however he stated it. But the Bible's, the literal Bible ideas are simpler than modern science, and there's no reason to believe that it has to be more complicated than that in a lot of instances. So, you know, the Earth is flat, it looks flat, it behaves like it's flat, and so there's no reason to assume that it isn't flat unless someone can come up with some really good reason to believe that, and there actually isn't any good reason to believe that it's not flat. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've been talking about it for being flat. People think it's a backwards idea because they thought of it first.
But like, I guess I'm not sure if I quite finished what I was saying about the Earth being round. That's actually an ancient idea. So we think of the flat Earth as being like really retro, like thousands of years ago. But the idea of it being round that comes from the idea that the sun is the central god, and the Earth is just one of the many planets going around the sun, like, because the sun has to be at the center. That's their god, and we're just, you know, little servants of the
Interesting.
god. So and also, like, it comes from ancient drug use too, I think. Like the people who had this theory also believed that there were creatures roaming around on the sun and the moon, and I tend to that was from drug use. And the people who wrote the ancient Indian, the Rig Veda, their ancient holy books, they were inspired in part by the drug soma, and we don't actually know what soma was, but
I hope
it
that's
could
not
have been a hallucinogenic drug of some kind.
I
So.
hope that's not blasphemous to say it came from drugs. Maybe not.
Well, some of their
Yeah, that's just what they did.
yeah, it was, and the ancient Greeks also took drugs, and that's a documented fact. But it's, I don't think that's necessarily the entire inspiration. Just that was one of the things that they did, and and I think it was a holy book. There's a lot to be gained from those ancient texts. It's holy the way that the Bible's holy too. So it's just one of the ancient texts, but. People tend not to look to the Bible for great science, and if they're not willing to look to the Bible for science, I don't see why they should be looking to ancient Indian religious texts for science, which is
Good
basically
point. Good
yeah.
point.
And it's not just I guess ancient Persia was at the time they had that Zoroastrianism was a big religion that was sun worship also, or it had a sun worshipping element to it, and so those were the big ideas. That's sort of where idea came from, of the Earth being something that had to revolve around the sun.
Yes. Well, I just think these ideas are fascinating.
Okay. Oh yeah. I was also going to mention the idea that things are just accidental. I think that the sun and the moons, they have a function. The sun has a specific function, and the moon has a specific function. And there's no reason to assume that they're just random rocks or balls of gas or things like that. And that, it's like your body. Your body has a heart and a liver, and each one of those performs a specific function. And, I think it's the same with the sun and the moon. So, okay, anyway, so the sun is a transmitter, the two suns are transmitters, the two moons are receivers, and the two flat Earths are receivers, or I'm sorry, they're resonators. They're resonators. So according to this idea of how to produce scalar waves, you need a transmitter, a receiver, and a resonator. And each one of these these are scalar waves. The scalar waveform is an idea that Tesla came up with. Scalar waves can go through any object, doesn't matter how thick, and they can go backwards and forwards in time. They're kind of seemingly magical, but they have all kinds of interesting properties. Those are called longitudinal waves, is another name for it. And I'm not a physicist, so I'll get in trouble if I try to say too much about it, but these are the, other people can look up what a scalar wave is or what a longitudinal wave is. It has magnitude, but it doesn't have direction. So, and it exists in the vacuum outside of the material world, but it can create energy that exists in the material world.
So you've put these ideas together really in a way that no one else has put them together before. All of these ideas. That's what I think is so brilliant. And whether or not it's true, we don't,
Right.
But I think we could
Yeah,
dive,
I'm open to the idea that
into
might not
this.
be true, but this is my attempt to explain some of the
yes.
things.
And
we see
how
on
else to find out if it's true or not?
Right.
By putting it out there.
Right, yeah.
And
And that's one thing, like I was saying, the flat Earth idea, that's not at all my original idea, but the idea of one of the things people say, well, if the Earth is flat, what's underneath it? So this is my idea of what's underneath it. And I think no one else, as far as I know, has come up with the idea of the sun transmitting to a moon on the other side of the Earth, and and them having a sun that transmits to our moon. That's totally
where
my
did you
original
come up
idea.
with that? Did you
Well,
just wake
looking up
up
the
one day?
idea of the, well, again, I like unusual ideas, and I guess all of my looking into some of these alternate science things, I came to Tesla's theories, and they just seem to fit together so beautifully as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
So, okay, this is the next picture. So anyway, there are stars too, and my idea of what the stars are, these are stationary waves, like the scalar waves. It forms like a sort of just a standing wave like that, and they cross each other. And according to the Tesla's theories, when they cross, they would create sort of an explosion, or and it would lead to a shell, like a hard, impenetrable shell, like a big bubble on the outside.
Is that what's called a Tesla shield?
Yeah, I don't think Tesla himself called it that, but was it Tom Bearden? He's another guy who was into the scalar waves. You know, there are a lot of people who are sort of disciples of Tesla, or they took Tesla's ideas further or studied them more. And,
He's military, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's right, yeah. But anyway, so my idea of what the stars are is that they're luminous points on these bubbles. So they're sort of like concentric bubbles that would move probably independently of each other. So when the stars are moving, like those are points of light on these bubbles.
They're not
that are
big.
Formed by no,
they're not gaseous things that have other planets running around. That's
well, I mean, they're just small. Like all of this is like unbelievably small by like we're used to thinking of this vast, enormous universe.
yeah.
And that's another thing that comes to us from the ancient Indian well, the Indians pioneered math, so like they were into advanced mathematics. I think ancient Babylon had some advanced geometry too. That Pythagoras, people say he stole a lot of his theorems from ancient Babylon, but anyway, ancient Indian mathematicians go back way before, maybe earlier than almost anyone else anyway, or maybe than anyone else. But I think because they were so advanced in their math, they loved these really huge numbers. So they came up with the idea of billions and trillions, or they talked about the universe and the Earth being millions or billions or trillions of years old. They talked about that way back then, and I think that's just because they loved numbers so much. And they also thought that the Indian culture, the Indian civilization, went back millions of years. So I don't think even modern scientists wouldn't agree with them about that. But but that's the origin of our ideas about the universe, and also a lot of ideas about evolution. That's derived from their ideas about reincarnation, and like Pythagoras, who we get a lot of our scientific ideas from. He was also into reincarnation, and I think he reportedly, like in the ancient world, there were people traveled, and there were people traveled from the east through Turkey, and the ancient Greek philosophers hooked up with them, or the ancient Greek philosophers might have traveled. So anyway, these ideas moved to ancient Greece. So the Greeks were influenced by the ideas from India and Persia, and so that's where, like, modern science was derived from things that weren't scientific. So that's one thing. I don't think people assume that because scientists have tended to believe something that it must be scientific, but that's not true. Like science was, I'm talking about the idea of evolution, science evolved from something else, but what it evolved from was actually not science. It evolved from some of these ancient mystical ideas, and so they're good. We developed the scientific method, which is a very wonderful thing that can help us understand our universe, but scientists often have not looked at the origins of some of their ideas to see where they came from. So they just, along with the good things about science, they sort of adopted some things. They haven't examined all of their own ideas critically enough, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty good point. That I think it's a good point. Now, so you've come up with that idea of the scalar waves coming together.
Yeah, or I just want to say, yeah, my book's available at the library. In case anyone
yeah,
wants
you
to
can
look
always,
it up.
if you're interested in this, if this has piqued your interest, it's at the Ann Arbor Library. The book, it's very quick read, but there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of. She didn't just, she's not just coming up with this. There's a lot of different sightings,
Right, yeah. You can check out
references.
things
She's
yourself,
got it
yeah.
all written down, all where she came up with these ideas and put them together so eloquently.
Right. Yeah, the book doesn't have pictures because It's
No.
been more expensive for me.
Right,
to,
but it has a really
publish
nice
it
cover. It's
than-
very
yeah.
attractive.
Oh, thank you.
And I think it's important to question, just because people have always said something.
Oh, just another thing I was going to say about science. Our astronomy was actually interchangeable with astrology for most of history. So, like, you think of those as totally different now, but throughout most of history, science, or astrology and astronomy were actually the same thing. And it's only recently that they diverged. So, people like Sir Isaac Newton were into all kinds of things like alchemy and astrology that now we would not consider science. So if we're willing to dispute some of their ideas about those things, I think we should be willing to also dispute their ideas about the cosmos. So,
Yeah, we don't know.
Right.
I mean, it's worth delving into. I mean,
Right.
these ideas are really, really good. Gosh, I don't know what else. Have we shown all of the
Yeah.
pictures? Okay, so they've seen all of that since we didn't have them in the book. So
right, yeah. So anyway, just be willing to, they've just being willing to question science, and like I said, science is actually a lot of the ideas that we take unquestioningly. It's just because maybe we've seen them on our television, or someone with a degree from an important university
Right.
comes to us with a particular idea.
and we're such visual people.
Right,
When
yeah.
we see it, it's like, oh, that's the way it is.
Right.
So it's very interesting. I could actually talk more about this, but I don't want to get into too much because we're ready to wrap up here. But yeah, I just want to.
Thank you so much, Anna. I really
Oh, you're
appreciate
welcome.
you
No,
coming.
this is a good stuff to get out there, and and
I just think it's fun to think about. That's
yeah. And
It's
there's
like even if you think this is whatever, think of it as an entertaining science fiction idea, if nothing else.
But I think I think you're onto something, Laurel.
Okay,
I really
think
do.
so.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think we're done here, but it's been a really good little talk here.
Okay, thank you.
I think
Hi, this is Shane reporting for Green Left TV. We're at the University of Tasmania where tonight climate skeptic and all-round good guy Lord Monckton is giving a lecture to the faithful. Lord Monckton is currently in Australia, it must be an election year, to promote his own brand of climate skepticism. We hope there will be a little bit of action this evening, so let's hang around for a bit and see what transpires. I heard a little bit of your interview this morning on ABC Radio. Will you be sort of covering the same material?
Yes, my subject is threefold really. It's the carbon tax, the climate scam, and the UN's Agenda 21 environmental programme. And the question I'll be asking is, can democracy survive all three? Give you one example of that. The Greens, when they realised I was coming to Tasmania, issued a statement this morning in which they said that I should not be allowed to speak on the university campus. So you can see that exactly the kind of control that was exercised by the fascists in Germany before Hitler came to power, the same kind of control as was exercised by Lenin and his lieutenants in Russia, by Mussolini in Italy, that is the same kind of control the Greens are now trying to exercise here by saying that I should not be allowed to speak on a university campus. Teams of them will ring around the universities. If I'm invited to speak on climate science or economics to a faculty or to undergraduates as part of a university course, letters will come from all over the world saying, do not let him speak. Now, why would they do that? If I am some kind of drivelling idiot, then I will hang myself out of my own mouth. The whole idea of academia is to allow everybody to have their say. I'm not whipping people up to any kind of violence. I'm not preaching hatred or racialism. I'm just talking about scientific equations and economic investment appraisals. On any view There is no excuse for any of these people to try to prevent me from speaking at universities, but they do.
Oh.
That is disturbing.
You know, Tasmania is the heartland of the Greens.
Of course, but even so, if that is the heartland of the Greens, and that is how the Greens behave, then what they will gradually be doing is taking a stranglehold over the life of Tasmania. For instance, if you want to build a house, you need bricks, yes? There used to be a brickworks here. The Greens came along and said, we don't want a brickworks. That brickworks had been here for 100 years. It was shut because they demanded that it should be shut. And now, if you want bricks, you have to ship them hundreds of miles from mainland Australia. So now, in addition to their food miles that they're always going on, we now have brick miles as a direct result of the totally mad, totally nihilistic behaviour of the Greens. And so what I'm saying is, it's time that they realised we will not allow democracy to be shut down. We will no longer allow our businesses to be closed by these people. And if they continue to tell lies in the name of enriching themselves and bankrupting working people, shutting down mines, shutting down farms, because they think that that's what they want, if they tell lies to do that, then in future they will be prosecuted for fraud, and they will go to prison for a very, very, very long time.
Lord Monckton, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm here at the UTAS Lecture Theatre, Stanley Burberry Theatre, where representatives of the Flat Earth Society are ambushing the good people coming in to hear Lord Monckton speak tonight. I'm here with Kerry. Kerry, why are you here tonight?
Well, we're certainly not here to ambush anyone. We're here to invite people in so they can hear Lord Monckton speak about the travesty and dark arts of peer review science, something which leads to other false beliefs like a round Earth, which again is supported by the travesty of modernity that is Google Earth. All these are conspiracies, and Lord Monckton here is a force of reason in this dark world.
And I'm talking to Alan, who's come along this evening to hear Lord Monckton speak. Alan, what are you hoping to hear from Lord Monckton tonight in regards to the climate science?
Oh, I don't think it'll be anything new. He's been saying the same thing for a while.
Do you believe that the government has a responsibility to act on climate change, if they can?
Oh, indeed. If they can, yeah. If they can.
So if it's not caused by carbon dioxide, there's really not a lot the government can do.
Yeah, I would say that's a fair comment.
Yeah, sure.
But if some clever people can think of something they can do to mitigate climate change, well, good, let them do it.
Yes, we're here to show people that yes, the work of climate scientists is the work of the devil. The trickery that they put out in the so-called peer reviews is nothing more than a tissue of lies from the blood of Satan. And we're here to let you all know of the great travesty that NASA, collaborating with many foul fiends in the scientific community, are trying to convince us that the Earth is round. And at many a time, they doctor photos from the dark dungeons that they come from of a round Earth. But if it was a round Earth, we would fall off.
You've obviously come to hear Lord Monckton speak tonight, the famous climate skeptic. What do you hope to hear tonight?
We'd just like to know what he's got to say. That's all. We don't, we're just interested to hear what his thoughts on climate change are.
There are people that have written letters to the university that have tried to stop him coming to Tasmania. Do you think that's fair?
No.
Hey, don't believe the lies of climate scientists, mate.
I think everybody should be given the opportunity to express their views, and there's a lot of mixtures around, aren't there? So let's see what comes out of this tonight. He obviously doesn't believe it. A lot of people do, though.
Yep. Do you believe in climate change?
I have mixed feelings about it, a reservation. So
I really can't answer. Some of the things that are happening today happened when I was a boy,
Against strange, new, controversial addendum like round Earth, like a climate that can change. Does a leopard change his shorts? I'm so glad that we had this opportunity. Can you see the brochure as I put it here? Oh, it's trembling a bit. It's the wind.
I'm here with Rebecca at University of Tasmania, where Lord Monckton is speaking tonight. Do you believe in climate change?
I'm leaning towards that side, yes, but I'm not 100% sure because there's a lot of science involved, obviously, but I am leaning towards that side.
We have representatives of the Flat Earth Society here tonight.
Yeah.
Do you believe the Earth is flat?
No.
The Earth is flat. Climate change is not happening.
If you're going in to see Lord Monckton tonight, what are you hoping to hear tonight?
I think I'm hoping to hear some views that perhaps we don't come across every day in Tasmania. We all have an opinion on this subject, but it's good to hear every end of the spectrum and everything in between. And he's obviously very vocal about what he believes. It'll be interesting to see what he has to say and how he tries to perhaps win over the audience.
Sure. Do you believe in the climate science? Suggesting that there is climate change yourself?
I studied environmental studies within the School of Geography and Enviro Studies here at the university, and a science is a science. I find it very hard to disbelieve what the majority of the scientific world has to say about this.
Do you believe the Earth is flat?
No.
I'm here with John Hunter, a climate scientist. John, you've turned up tonight to just watch what goes on as people front up to hear Lord Monckton, the world-renowned climate skeptic. How do you feel about him appearing at the Stanley Burbury Theatre at UTAS?
I'm pretty negative about him appearing at all at the university, I have to admit. So I've actually complained about it to the university. A lot of people have. I don't think it's appropriate for somebody like him to be talking here.
Someone like Lord Monckton, you mean a climate skeptic?
I mean somebody, well, for a start, one of the words in the title of the talk is climate scam. So he's basically saying that people like myself are frauds, we act fraudulently. And I think if somebody comes to university, they shouldn't say that...
Come in and listen to some real science, which we really don't normally listen to. And I must say, to our costume credit, though your opinions do not. God bless you all. Bless you.
No to peer review science.
Yeah, John, we were just discussing before, we were rudely cut off by Lord Schmuckton. We were discussing you wouldn't debate climate science with Lord Monckton because his arguments are basically flawed. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, you can search all over the web and you'll find debunking of his science, so I wouldn't even bother.
Sure. Climate change is happening.
We know it's happening. There's uncertainties in everything, but there's certain things we know for sure. So, for instance, we don't know that the best guess of what's going to happen isn't that nothing's going to happen. The best guess is that something's going to happen and we're going to get warmer, sea levels are going to rise, but we don't know exactly how much. Sure. So that's what we mean by being unequivocal.
Sure. If you could strap Lord Monckton to a chair, coat him in honey and pour ants over him, just before he screamed, what would you say to him?
I don't think I'd want to say anything to him, actually. I think just making fun of him is probably the best thing. I mean, you shouldn't take him seriously, full stop.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Climate change is a fraud and as is the ground of it. We represent the Flat Earth Society.
It was a time of innocence. The internet was still in its infancy. The defense industry had no idea what they'd unleashed upon the world. It was like an over-enthusiastic fetus about to rip itself free from DARPA's comfy womb. Even by 1990, the pre-internet had its trolls before the term was coined. Bulletin boards and peer-to-peer networks, as the Wide World Web was known back then, demanded a higher standard of trolls. Nerds, as we called them, had to earn their title. The World Wide Web back then was a cumbersome beast. There were no graphics. Everything was represented by columns of text, which had to be manipulated with a primitive keyboard. And even if the nerd of the day could afford a good enough computer to display a pitiful representation of a photo, it would take up to a month to download. Adobe Photoshop had revolutionized the graphic design studio. One no longer had to spend thousands for photo manipulation software. Adobe had priced the new Photoshop at a generous $800, or around $5,000 in today's money. The naive public had no concept of the kind of fakery that has been exposed these days. Although it had been filmed over 20 years earlier, a trip to the moon still required an expensive studio with its own Stanley Kubrick and possibly thousands of dollars worth of foil, duct tape, and curtain rails. But nonetheless, the moon landing was still old hat. For most, the moon landing had been in their father's day. People were getting bored with NASA and bored with outer space in general. The CGI just wasn't good enough for the kind of space propaganda science fiction films of today. Star Wars hadn't even been revamped, let alone rebooted. And the ISS hoax was still on the drawing board. The planet paintings of yesteryear, which we all know from our textbooks, were beginning to look outdated. Even your average Joe astronomer was starting to see through the transparent images in their telescopes. In order to sustain the siphoning of shekels from the unsuspecting taxpayer, NASA needed a new gimmick. Something to wow the people again. Something to divert attention from the unobtainable goals within our own solar system. The naughty, naturalized Nazis of NASA needed something beyond the ordinary man, beyond humanity for eternity. Something abstract that people wouldn't be able to test for themselves. Something for professional and amateur astronomers and cosmologists to chew on until they came up with their next hoax. Something a lot like Hubble, the magical Masonic flying space telescope and camera.
If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down. If you haven't subscribed, hit the red subscribe button. Also click on the little bell icon to get notifications of my Flat Earth videos, which I upload every day.